Welcome back to the OperaWire podcast. I am the co-host David Salazar here with my brother Francisco Salazar, and we have a really interesting, fascinating, exciting episode to share with you guys here today. How are you doing, Fran?
Good, good. Looking forward to the beginning of this season, which has already started a bit turbulent, but I'm actually looking forward to some of the performances that we're going to go see this season.
Yeah, we have a lot of things coming up on the slate. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit more about opening nights coming up. It's actually one of our topics that we're going to be able to hit. But I think we're going to start off with this one with a little bit of a controversy, and then slowly we're going to get to a place of more hopefulness and excitement and reminiscence. So let's talk about. I mean, Russia has been the topic worldwide, honestly.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
obviously, in the opera world, it's been a pretty controversial one when it
Mhm.
comes to one particular figure. And right now in the UK is feeling a lot of that heat. Why don't you take it away and tell us what's going on?
So, I mean, we're going to obviously talk about this opening night in our opening night section, but it's the lead up to this opening night is clearly creating a lot of controversy because it's the return of Anna Netrebko to the Royal Opera House in the lead of Tosca in Oliver Remeer's new production. Um, we all knew that her return to the Royal Opera House was going to be a little bit of a not controversial, but was going to always ignite some type of talk about whether or not it's the right time or not. She hasn't been back to the Royal Opera House since 2019 when she performed La Forza del Destino. And, she's kind of steadily been working with Oliver Mears. She worked with him last year in La Gioconda at Salzburg and also with Antonio Papano in that same production. So slowly they've kind of been opening the doors for trying to figure out how they can bring her back to the Royal Opera House. Important to note, the Royal Opera House never fired her. They figured out how to, they made an agreement that it wasn't the right moment to work with her after the war broke out because of her past statements with Putin or her alleged relationship with Putin, which has never been an actual relationship. It's just an award here and award there. And, a couple of statements that,
And
could be.
there was some political support in the
There
past.
was a 2012 endorsement, but then after that there was nothing more, and a couple of other things that she did here and there that we could say were a little bit problematic, but 10 years have passed, and so after the war she had to release statements. The Royal Opera House did not drop her; they didn't fire her, but they made an accord that it wasn't the right moment to work with her. Now, 3 years later, they're bringing her back for not one but two productions and a special recital. We knew that was going to ignite some controversy, particularly from the Ukrainians, um, because she is sanctioned in Ukraine. So there was a letter that was handed to the Guardian by a bunch of politicians and artists from Ukraine. In that letter, they're urging the Royal Opera House to not work with her. Now, that letter ends by stating something like the Royal Opera House now faces a defining choice between status and responsibility, between profit and values, between silence and conscience. We urge you to remain, as you consistently have, on ethical side of art and of history. Um, Again, this letter was signed by filmmakers, by artists, by politicians, one of them being the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, that was kind of curious. And it sparked a conversation about whether or not the Royal Opera House should bring her back. Um, when this was announced back in April, the new director, Jakub Hirscher, had said that he wants the finest singers in the Royal Opera House, and that he believed that she's one of the fine singers in that Fach. And he said that he has no reason to not believe her statements condemning the war. Oliver Mears last year said that he didn't think it was the right moment to bring her back at the Royal Opera House, but still thought that because she was such an important artist, he was going to work with her in Salzburg. Now he's going to work with her again in Tosca.
Yeah. So obviously we have this statement, this situation happening, and obviously it brings up a lot of questions about. I mean, look, when we start talking, I think when you start isolating one person, when you start kind of saying this person should not be allowed to because of so and so, then you have to obviously ask yourself questions. And the
Mhm.
one question that always comes to mind is, okay, is there anyone else at the Royal Opera House who might in some way, shape, or form be related or be performing in Russia, right? A singer, an
Mhm.
artist who has been there. And I mean, again, this is a tale of two Sopranos. We're going to jump into it, but Aida Garifulina who is, according to Instagram, the most popular, 1.7 million subscribers,
Something like
female
that.
opera singer in the world. Okay. So that's a lot of influence and power. She's singing
Hmm.
at the Royal Opera House. It's also been announced, and it's not something new because she's been going back and forth, but she's doing a pretty big concert in Russia coming up. Is that
Hmm.
correct?
At the Bolshoi Theater, she's doing a gala with a couple of very well-known performers.
So I ask you this: why is she not getting any of the flack that Netrebko's been getting? Again, I know Netrebko is probably a more important opera star. She's actually had a, obviously more important career in that respect. But Aida Garifulina is actually more of a crossover artist. She might be more popular. She sings a ton with Andrea Bocelli. She might be more renowned outside of the classical music
Hmm.
world than Anna Netrebko. She sang at the World Cup in 2018, right? Opening
She
and at the
was the
final.
face of Russian culture in at the World Cup. She sang with Robbie Williams, and she was there doing her popera thing. And let's not forget, she's also doing The Voice Kids this season. She just got signed in Russia as well,
So
and she's been doing concerts here and there. We don't really know what her affiliation to the government is, but what we
but
can,
has she ever been asked? Because she was going to sing at the Met the same
yeah.
season that Netrebko got fired from the Met,
Mm-hmm.
and then she mysteriously got taken off the roster. I don't recall her being pressured for a statement. Has she ever been
No,
pressured for a statement? Has she ever been asked for a statement?
there has
No.
never been a single bit of a statement. We've never actually known what she did, but yes, you're right. She was going to sing at the Bolshoi Theater a few days after the invasion, which she actually sang, and then she got quietly taken off the roster at the Metropolitan Opera. It's been a very
No
interesting thing.
fanfare, no statements, no
No
nothing. Same thing happened with
fanfare.
Ibla Gersmava, who
Same.
we know is a Putin affiliate.
Yes, she was able to sing at the Gran Teatro Liceo the next season, but again, the Gran Teatro Liceo never really made any statements about Russian singers or anything like that. There was never really any talk about any of it. So my biggest issue with this letter urging the Royal Opera House to not let Anna Netrebko, because as they state, she's a longtime symbol of cultural propaganda for a regime that is responsible for serious war crimes, to return to its stage in title roles. I do question the Ukrainians, and I ask them, what do you mean by cultural propaganda when you have nothing to say about, in 2022, Ildar Abdratsakov performing Attila at the Royal Opera House in concert, Elena Stikina opening a new production of Aida, who goes back and forth every 5 minutes to Russia, performing with Valery Gergiev, taking pictures with Valery Gergiev, and Aida Garifulina. There's a couple of more singers as well. So are they cultural propaganda, or are they just whatever? Because as I see it, and I am all for the Ukrainian cause. I am pro-Ukraine for them to have their land back. They should not have been invaded. This Putin's aggression is wrong. It's horrible, and too many people have died. And there shouldn't be a deal with Putin. Putin should give back the land regardless of whatever. But what is cultural propaganda if not a person who's going back and forth to Russia, performing under Valery Gergiev, performing at the Bolshoi Theater, who's fired people who've spoken out against the war? The Mariinsky Theater has been doing the same exact thing. Are they not cultural propagandists? Are they not doing the same thing? Anna Netrebko has been out of Russia for 3 years. She was called a traitor. Her concerts were canceled because she spoke out against the war. She hasn't been there. She had to sell her New York apartment. She's doing this and that, as many people would state. What are the repercussions for other singers who go back and forth and do whatever they want and have their careers, have no pressure, have no protests, have no statements? I mean, I don't understand that, and I quite frankly find it to be a lot of hypocrisy in an industry that quite frankly needs to get it together, in my opinion. You either stand, you either say everyone's a cultural propagandist, or you say no one is, because this
Yeah, I mean, I
statement
think
for
I think
me
that word is
has a
the
lot of
challenge, right?
holes.
How do you define that, right? But I think, people need to define that, because if you're going to say that because they're affiliated with Putin, or if you're going to make that statement, then you kind of got to prove it, right?
But what does
That's
that even
one.
mean? What does it even mean to be
Right. So
affiliated by Putin?
that's one thing, right? That's A. Then B, like, okay, how do you define someone that, like, right now, assuming you don't know if they're Putin affiliate or not, this singing in Russian theater and to quote Peter Gelb, taking money from the Russian theaters where, quote unquote, Putin signs the checks. Is that cultural propaganda? Because if it is, then you got to fire a lot of people. And again, I want to say something. I am not in favor of people getting fired. But
Mhm.
what I do find questionable is that if you're going to single out one person, and again, the other thing is too, I don't think anyone should get fired, and I don't necessarily say that Netrebko is an angel here, or she's a victim, or that she doesn't, or that all the allegations are untrue or not. But what I do know is that she's being singled out when, if you think she is in fact a Putin ally and that she's taking Russian money, blah blah blah. Well, I can also point to you a bunch of other cases. Again, I bring up Aida Garifulina. She's also doing that, but she's not getting the same heat. So I do think that this kind of, it's ridiculous. The whole situation, in my eyes, is just completely silly for one reason and one reason only. It's because it feels like it's just focused on attacking one person. Focused on attacking one person, and it's how does it really help the Ukrainian cause when you're just centering it on attacking one person instead of being much more vehement about getting rid of, if again, if you're Ukrainians and you're coming together to say, ROH, you be on our side, don't accept Russian artists who support the regime or who are taking money from the regime, then it's got to be more than uninterruptible. It's so easy to bully one person, whether she's innocent, guilty, whatever have you. It just comes, in my opinion, it is a little weak. And I do think that a lot of this vitriol does come from the fact that, and we're going to go to the Met soon, the Met general manager has put a lot of money, and I mean, well, not money, sorry, a lot of his energy and effort into focusing on an Trepko and forgetting about everyone else. So I think that in some ways, I don't necessarily know if the two are correlated, but I do feel that it is related in some way because the heat that Anand Trepko is getting, being singled out like that, when other people that I would argue, Aida Garifulina has way more followers on Instagram. Hers is a public account on Instagram. I think Netrepko's is private, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know. I'm not sure anymore because I know that after the war she did put it private. I follow her, so I don't know if it's private or public. But Garifulina does have more followers. I just want to also put one thing in context. Netrebko had made political statements or had done things that people had outrage caused outrage, but that was 2014. We're talking about 10 years. And we don't, and since that 2014 donation to the Donetsk opera, which the Guardian reported that money was received by their artists, let's make that really important. Um, there hadn't been any more statements regarding politics. People can go back to that her birthday was celebrated at the Kremlin, but there's also proof that that was a rented hall, as it's been rented many times and had nothing, no affiliation to Putin. And we can talk about, oh, she sang at the World Cup. Well, so did Juan Diego Flores. So did Aya Garifulina. So did Placido Domingo. So did many international artists that went to the World Cup. And if we're going to talk about the World Cup, let's talk about everyone who went and did Putin's bidding at the World Cup and decided to go and give the economy of Russia back in whatever year it was
2018.
money. So that also for me is hollow and runs very hollow to talk about the World Cup and saying Putin this, Putin that. That's a joke.
Well,
Um,
again, it goes back to how are we defining these things? Because again, Aida Garifulina in many ways was the cultural face of that.
So she was the face. She went. She had opening. She was at the World Cup. They did a private concert on Red Square, and they did another closing concert on Bolshoi. But Aida Garifulina sang at the opening with Robbie Williams. She was the face. She got all the spotlight for it.
Yeah. So I mean, anyways, it is interesting to see how this is kind of torpedoed. It is overshadowing a really important opening night for the ROH because it is the first season of Jakub Klusa's
Yeah,
tenure. The Netrepko performances are sold out.
they are
Um,
sold out as we all expected they were going to be, and I mean, it's probably going to be it's they're probably going to be great because she's still very much singing at the top of her game, and she's done this Tosca worldwide now, and it's a great performance, and she's going to be singing with Gerald Finley, and with Freddie Di Tommaso, which they had a big success in Verona last or 2 seasons ago, doing Traviata together, and they just did a concert as well together. So I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be a good Tosca, and it's going to be recorded for cinema. So, whether you like it or not, I think, she deserves her place at the Royal Opera House.
I think that the issue for me personally is really the lack of consistency here. I think it's just, it feels very mob mentality to go after one person, and as problematic as she might be, because I don't, again, I want to emphasize, I don't think she's completely free from it, because obviously, like you said, she did make public statements in the past, or did she had some sort of proclamations in the past that obviously people can latch onto. But I do think that if you're going to do,
Or statements in many ways that have been taken out of context as well. Again, I think, again, it's not a defense, but I also think that people have really, the way that the way that they've treated her versus someone like Valery Gergiev, who, quite frankly, didn't has not, I mean, other than that Italian concert that was canceled, when he got fired, and nobody was talking about him, and nobody was saying anything. I mean, they've been out of
yeah,
the
but the
spotlight.
difference there is that Valery Gergiev has, like you said, aside from that attempt in Italy, hasn't come back. He's done.
No,
He
because he
hasn't
never
tried to
gave
make
a
a comeback.
statement. He never said anything. He was never. But we all knew he was a political pawn from the beginning. Well, this has been a very different instance, because it's been a very gray. It's like we're not very. It's been a very gray in terms of the relationship that she's clearly not had with Putin, versus someone like Ibla Gertsmava, or someone like now Ildar Abdratsakov, who was very much who endorsed him during a war. So I mean, it's a little bit shady at this point, and a little bit gray. And I think that, again, I'm not to defend past statements and past actions and past things that have been very just a little bit like not
I mean,
correct, but
I just think it's, I don't know. I think there's other things that are probably more problematic. She's already sung at every other opera house around Europe. Obviously the Royal
yeah.
Opera House is an important beacon, cultural beacon, and obviously there's people that will latch onto it and say, "Hey, we don't want you to be on the wrong side of history with this." But I mean, again, there's other singers that are going back to Russia, taking Russian money, and then, I mean, then going out, leaving Mother Russia and going out into the world and conquering, right? So conquering the stages of the Royal Opera House, or, the Paris Opera, or stuff like that. So, I think it is questionable.
Yeah.
But I think we should move on to another topic, another big
Agreed.
story that came out over the last couple of weeks, which is that the Metropolitan Opera has a couple of initiatives as it tries to find ways to reconnect with the community now that the Opera Guild is defunct. So why don't you break it down for us?
So there's three new initiatives. Number one is Opening Act. Opening Act will bring opera to the youngest audience members with a new series of interactive family workshops. The program will be designed for children ages 4 to 8 and their guardians, and will explore the fundamentals of theatrical storytelling through movement, play, hands-on activities, and special performances. The first program will be Donizetti's La Fille de Regiment, and the second one will be La Bohème. The second initiative is Tuesday Talks, a new series of free 30-minute pre-performance lectures by leading scholars and Met staff. And finally, the last one is an expansion of the Under 40 program with more performances and additional seating options ranging from $50 to $110. So yeah, we were mixed on this because, for the opening act, it's $250 if you have two children. So basically, the registration fee is $200 for guardian and child, and then if you have an extra child, it's $50. I think for people who right now are, making cut costs because the economy is not great, it's not doing well. People are saving money on entertainment. They're not going to the movies. They're not going to the opera. They're not doing a lot of things. I think, in my opinion, this program, which is an interesting program about introducing opera to children, and opera is expensive, so I understand why they have to charge, but it's not affordable for a middle class family who has to, choose whether they buy a organic or regular priced tomato sauce, or something else at the grocery store. I just think that it doesn't really justify I wouldn't do it if I had children. I mean, I think it's too expensive.
I mean, cost aside, I do think that it is a good initiative, and I do think that starting off with something like Fidel Gimon, for example, is perfect. Um, I do think that the positive of this initiative too is that it might, and again, I don't know what the Mets programming is down the line, but I do think it could recontextualize some of the programming as more family friendly, and thus, attract that kind of group towards more than just the Magic Flute, right? Because that's their big holiday opera that they show every year. Or the occasional Hansel and Gretel, though I don't think they've done that one recently. So I mean, I do think that, and like you've said, you love the bel canto repertoire. There's a lot of great comedies in the bel canto repertoire, which I think would be very family friendly. L'Elisir d'Amore is another one that comes to mind right away. So I do think that this kind of program, while I do agree with the cost, because I don't know, when I ask myself questions about, okay, so who are they aiming for here? Like, maybe most families that live in New York City, that might not be too crazy. People that live in
I
the Upper
disagree.
West Side, fair.
But
People
then
who's
your
gonna
Upper West Side, you're talking about a specific class. You're not talking about everyday man. And honestly, I don't think that that's really who they're trying to bring it to. I think they're
well,
trying to
I
just
do
bring it to same
think
audiences.
that it's a solid beginning. I do think it's important to big picture, yes, because I think the schools are really where the initiatives need to begin. I think that, again, it's tricky because the Met can't do everything, and they got to start small and they got to
No.
branch out. And I think that this initiative of all of them, um, I definitely think it's potentially the most important because you got to foment a culture of music for the next generation so that
So
the
you
opera
should make
house.
it a little bit more populous, in my opinion. And I don't think that paying $200 is something that most families, at least middle class families, can afford. And I think that
It still needs to happen though. There needs to
sure,
be a
it can.
cost,
So then my opinion, they should have brought it to schools.
which is hard because you gotta probably consult with the mayorship and the government of the state of the city of New York. So I don't know. I mean, I do think that cost is definitely a question in contention, but um I do think it's an important initiative, and so it was going to cost something. Maybe I don't
Right.
know. Maybe there's a scholarship possibility in there to bring in for other like, families that might find the cost prohibitive. But of course, what are the lines that you draw there? What do how do you structure that so that maybe you do include people that might find $200 prohibitive right now, while also continuing to, for the people that don't care about that cost, say, you know what,
Right.
like I'll do it. Again, I do think $200 is a debatable situation because for some people, like, it's not crazy. It's not a
Right.
thousand, it's not, it's, I don't know. I don't know if I completely am on board with you. I think this is the one where we might be most in disagreement about. The second initiative, the Tuesday Talks, I think in general it's fine. I think it's good. It's nothing like super, not that's not like reinventing the wheel. But I do think it's important that they try and like engage people prior to performance. I'm interested to see how I mean, I guess it's happening at List Hall, I imagine.
But it's happening in this hall.
So, I don't necessarily think it's super groundbreaking. But it's good that it's there. It's good that it's there. It's good that it's
Yeah, but you
programmed.
know what they should do? They should make the concerts later because people go out of work by 6 o'clock. Nobody's gonna make List Hall unless they want to have dinner and whatnot. So it is very challenging as well that they're gonna that it starts so early.
But other institutions do it and they pull it off. And also you don't
Yeah.
have to go, it's voluntary. I don't
No, it's
really
voluntarily, but I don't think it's going to break the wheel, and I don't think it's going to really actually create much of a new audience. As I stated, I think mostly it's going to be the older audience that doesn't work, that's retired, that probably could go 30 minutes before, but the people
well
that actually have to go work, pick up children, or do this and want to go to the opera performance, they're not going to go 30 minutes before.
but I do think again, just the overarching theme of the initiatives. I think that if the first initiative is aiming at the next generation,
Right.
and the third initiative is aiming at the millennials, the current
Mm-hmm.
generation, if you will. This one's definitely more geared toward, like you said, an older audience that
Mm-hmm.
probably has more time. And so it's kind of keeps them invested and keeps them
Right.
involved.
Yeah.
So again, for me, this is a lot of companies do this. So I don't think it's a big deal.
No, 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 it's
I
not a
don't think
big
it's gonna
deal.
bring in maybe new audiences, but I do think it presents an opportunity to interact with opera in a different way. Again, I think it's just so important that the institution like the Met, which I've always mentioned it symbolically, right? You go up Broadway and you get to Lincoln Center and you got to go all the way back. The Met is all the way at the back of Lincoln Center. It's like you have to go to the Met. The Met's not coming to you. It's not as easily accessible as other venues that are right on Broadway. So just the metaphorical, physical manifestation of that. I think it is important that the Met reach out to the community in a different way. And this is the start of it, or the restart of it, because they did used to do other programs at the Guild. This one's, this was fine for me. I think the last one's the one where I have questions.
Honestly, the last one I have really no issues with. I mean, under 40 program, I mean, great. They're gonna do more pre-performance parties and cocktails and give more chance for people to go and be able to interact with one another, meet younger people who might be interested in the opera and create more of a
But this is the
social
one.
gathering.
This is the one where I say, if you really want to do that, then you got to offer a different price range, because I do. I mean, and again, we can make the argument. People are like, well, yeah, but millenniums go and pay hundreds of dollars for an
Taylor
Ariana Grande
Swift?
concert, a Taylor Swift concert. Yeah, but they're not willing to do that for the opera. But on some level, it's like, I do think that it comes down to, they still see it as a bit more. There's a perception around it. I do think that if
Well, I mean, let's just face it, like, someone like Taylor Swift can create an event around something. I mean, for God's sakes, her latest album that she just announced, she made an event out of it. So I think when we've talked about this many times is how do you make opera an event? And I think in a way this creates kind of that idea of an event or something like that. I do question though, for example, like economics, finances. We've been talking about how the Met's been running low on their endowment and they haven't really been able to sell tickets, and they've had this under 40 program before, so this is not a new initiative. They're just expanding upon it because it has been successful. I think it's an important initiative to be able to bring young people to the opera, and it's probably, in my opinion, the better of the two. But I there are questions that you have to ask. How successful is this, and how much money are you actually losing uh by discounting tickets?
and I'm more along the lines that, again, I think the thing for me is, for example, I'm the target for that, or I don't know if I'm the target for that, because I'm under 40 and I do love opera, but I've never really, I mean, I've never really I mean, I've
Because they've
heard
only
about
been
it.
5 days.
I've heard
Yeah,
about it. But I've never really engaged with it, because I don't know what it is, to be honest with
yeah.
you. Aside from, under 40s, it's some sort of term. So I don't know. I guess it is popular. Maybe I'm completely wrong about it, but I've never really, I don't really know what it is, and I don't know that the initiative made me feel like you said, make an event out of it. But what kind of event are we talking about? Because
Yeah, I don't know what it is either. I haven't seen it.
that's because the other ones feel a little bit more. One of them is a very conservative measure, but it's specific. You're bringing a scholar; they're going to talk to people. The other ones, something very geared towards children. It feels very tactile. This is a party. Yeah.
In my opinion, the one that I really liked the most that they didn't even announce was the Sunday talkbacks after certain performances. I find those to be more entertaining because at least we're actually being able to have a Q&A with the artist right after their performance. And quite frankly, I saw the Tosca that they did with Sandra Rodonowski, Bryn Tervel, and Brian Jade. And it was just entertaining just to hear the performers speak about their work and engaging and being human beings. And I've always said and I always feel that for me, um I engage with an artist more than I engage with a production. I engage with a personality than I engage with something intellectual because they're transmitting emotions. And when I saw that Q&A after that Tosca performance, I was even more energized because I love I love just listening to them talk about the passion that they have for the music.
Do you know if these under 40 events ever feature, known artists coming in and joining in the conversation?
I don't, but I do know that they've in at some points brought drag queens.
Okay. I mean, again, I might be completely off the mark here, and I suspect that I might be. That initiative didn't. I guess in the overall, I guess our overall view on this was that this didn't feel like something completely unique. That, I mean, they
Yeah,
went out of their way to kind of announce it as this, hey, we're doing these initiatives, and it didn't really feel like it was something that, um
it wasn't
I guess when you have
groundbreaking.
an announcement like that of like, hey, we're gonna do these initiatives, you always look forward to something that feels completely new and fresh.
Hmm.
Again, I think the one for kids was probably the one where I was like, okay, it's not completely new, but at least, it feels tactile and specific. Um, the other ones, the under 40, I guess, just and this might be just a very personal thing, right? Because again, I've never attended one of these and never been very interested in it. It didn't really say to me, it didn't scream to me, hey, like this is how you bring in a new community. But again, I might be completely wrong. This might be a very successful initiative and they're just looking to expand it. And if that's the case, then good on them, to lock in on an audience that's or something that's being received well and building on it. And if that's the case, then I have to say I tip my hat. But personally, for me reading this news, it just didn't really feel like it was anything particularly unique or new outside of what we've already seen from the company.
So then maybe this season we should try one of those under 40 performances and see if we enjoy it.
Maybe, and then maybe we'll come back and talk about it in one of our Patreon exclusive episodes. Sure,
Yeah,
why
that would
not?
be fun. That would be fun.
All right. So let's shift gear to something really popular and exciting, and that's September is the month of opening nights
Yes, it
around the
is.
world,
It's
and
opening nights.
there's a couple of big ones coming up.
So the first one, obviously, is the Tosca at the Royal Opera House. We've already had a conversation about it. And it's the first production, a new production of Tosca since the Jonathan Kent production, which premiered with Angela Gergiu a few years back. And that was a very popular production, and it was very traditional in her way. And then this one's by Oliver Mears, and Oliver Mears is a very interesting director. I got to check out some of the images and some videos that were shared about her from his Gioconda production. It's very modern. So I'm very curious to see what this new production of Tosca is, and it's also Jakub Hirsch's first production as music director at the Royal Opera House. And besides Anna Netrebko doing Tosca, of course, Alexandra Kurczak is also bringing her heralded Tosca to the company, and they're joined by Freddie Di Tommaso, who we saw do Tosca last season at the Met, and Gerald Finley as well, who's doing Scarpia, and always been such an incredible artist to watch and see what he does next.
Yeah, and you're not going to see the Tosca, but you will see Vespri Siciliani, which opens up
Yeah,
right after. And that's an opera that I've never personally gotten a chance to see live in
yeah,
person. I know you have.
I
Um,
did.
and so, I mean, it's a unique Verdi opera, of course. Not one of my favorites, but it definitely does have some incredible moments. That overture
Yes,
is absolutely stunning. Yeah, I'm interested to see what your impressions are of the ROH, and I think it has a really good cast as well.
it has a really great cast for sure. And yeah, and I'm very excited for that because it's I think 2005 was the last 20 years since I've seen that work, and this time's in French, so it's going to be a very curious and interesting production to see. So that I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and then a
But,
few days later, you're going to Zurich, and you're going to be opening night there as well.
well, I'll be in Zurich for
Right.
opening night, and they're opening with a production of De Rosenkavalier. This is exciting for me. We'll talk about it. It's not one of my favorite Strauss works. But what's really exciting is that I haven't seen Diana Damrau in years since her Traviata here at the Met. So this will be very exciting, and she's doing the Marschallin. She famously did Sophie in her earlier years in her career, and there's a recording with her and Renee Fleming and Jonas Kaufmann that was released a few years back. But this is a very exciting to be able to see, in my opinion, one of my favorite sopranos of that generation, and who I've always admired of her acting and her way of just transforming into each character that she brings.
Yeah, that's exciting. And while you're over in Zurich, I'll be in New York.
Hmm.
Taking in Cavalier and Clay, The
Yes.
Adventures of Cavalier and Clay at the Metropolitan Opera. Opening night at the Met is always an event. It's always exciting. The last few years, we've been getting a lot of contemporary works, some hits, some misses. One of the hits in my opinion, we'll talk about briefly. Last year was not one of those hits, The
No.
Grounded. Cavalier and Clay, we'll see. I'm always very, I do think it's important. I know we disagree on this one. I know that
Mhm.
opening night is an important event, and I do think that bringing attention to new opera, contemporary opera is important, because it does kind of allow the conversation to rise above. Because opening night at the Met brings in a different kind of audience, right? It brings in
Yeah.
an audience that just wants to go to the opera just to go, and then the curiosity from people that want to, you know, be shoulder to shoulder with Hollywood stars and
Yeah.
New York elites,
Elite. Yeah.
right?
I got to meet
So
Whoopi Goldberg last year, so that was fun.
so I think that people might just go to the opera, and then if you kind of show them, hey, opera can also tell unique stories that you might connect with,
Right.
because it's closer to you than perhaps something, a Handel piece, or I just that's an example. I'm not picking on Handel. But anyways, my point being that might incentivize them to try it again and come back for other things. Uh, I'm always interested in that experiment because I also know that the next day or the next 2 days after that, they'll have a classic, one of
Yeah.
the standard rep pieces there. Um, yeah, we'll see what Cavalier and Clay brings. I'll be writing my review, obviously.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens at the Met. I'm always excited. I'm always excited, and I'm always willing to give everyone the chance to. I mean, I go in with the highest expectations. I mean, this is the Metropolitan Opera, right?
Right.
So I go to the opera with the highest expectations. I want it to be great. I expect it to be great.
Right.
I'm hoping that it's great. So, I'm hoping that this is great.
Yeah, I think it should be an interesting work, and I think it's also very nice that you're giving an opportunity. They're giving an opportunity to young singers, in this cast. So that's also
Yeah.
nice to see. A break from I don't want to say like the stars, but it's a nice break for a lot of younger singers to be able to have that exposure. So I do agree in that case, and and I think because it's a newer work, there is an opportunity to be able to give those young singers who are looking at that break, an opportunity. Like last year, Emily D'Angelo. I think a lot of people didn't really know who she was,
She was excellent.
and
She
she
was
was
excellent.
amazing in it. In that, I mean, she had already won Operalia, and she was rising. But I think that giving her the exposure of Grounded and giving her that opportunity really did solidify herself as one of those upcoming and rising stars in the opera world, if not now a star.
Yeah. And then there's
Yeah.
another big opening night I think that you wanted to hit on,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah, I mean, Dead Man Walking is celebrating its 25th anniversary. It's now the most produced modern opera in modern day, 80 productions now. So, and it's returning to where it made its debut, which was the San Francisco Opera. So, I kind of wanted to give a shout out to the San Francisco Opera for bringing back and celebrating those 25 years. For Dead Man Walking, Jamie Barton is going to be performing the lead role. Ryan McKinney as well, and Susan Graham, who brought the opera to life, is also going to star in that cast. So it's really wonderful to have that full circle and to see. Yeah, I mean, I had a mixed reaction to the work on a whole last season when it opened the Met. Um,
two
but
seasons
not
ago.
2 seasons ago, sorry. But I think it's really great that this opera has been able to continue to bring new audiences to actually, but one of those operas that has a lot lifelong and has had life,
Yeah,
which
it's
we
stood the test of time. I mean, again,
exactly.
25 years is relatively short compared to, the repertory staples that have been here for hundreds of years, right? But, in a contemporary space where things move so fast and everyone's
Yeah,
just jumping to the next thing and attention spans are shrinking, um, for an opera to have 80 productions in 25 years and to still remain relevant, because I think that what works about that opera is it's it feels timeless in
yeah,
how it explores a very controversial topic. Shouldn't be very controversial, but it is.
yeah,
Um, and the humanity behind something like, the death penalty.
yeah,
Um, but I think it's even more than that death penalty. I think it's an opera about redemption. It's an opera that kind of it has a very complicated dynamic at the core of the opera. The central one of the central characters, an extremely complicated character. Um, for many people. But yeah, I think that it's really important to see an opera stand the test of time the way that this one has, to see an opera that the company that originally premiered it is bringing it back. Because that's
yeah.
the other thing, right? Because so many times, so often you see companies premiere an opera and then they never bring it back, you know? Um,
And we've seen that time and time again. We'll see what happens with, for example, Grounded, or we'll see what happens with the Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. And then there's a number of operas, and it's not even to hit that one or this one. It's just you know what I mean, how whatever feeling I have of it, because there's operas in the classical repertoire, People have mixed reactions about Wozzeck or Lulu, right? And but those operas have also stood the test of time, and they are repeatedly performed. So I think it's great that we're finally getting an opera being performed over and over that is having a demand for productions not only in America but also in Europe as well. So that's great.
Yeah. So with that, let's shift to our segment of talk about our opera of the month, which we already kind of talked about, but we didn't go into
Yeah.
it in depth. And it's an interesting one because we don't share necessarily the same opinions on it. And that opera is Strauss's masterpiece, in my opinion, Rosenkavalier, excuse me.
Yes.
An opera that I absolutely adore, that I've seen many times. That in my personal view, the opera is great at the beginning, but it gets better and better and better as the story unfolds. I think Act Two is absolute perfection. When I go to see a performance of Rosenkavalier, I do think the first scene is incredible. I do sometimes, depending on who's performing Baronox, I could sometimes find that section to be a little bit meandering at times, because it does rely so much on that character carries that scene, and if it's not a great performer. It can get a little bit long-winded, and it can drag.
Yeah.
I think obviously the end of the first act is absolutely stunning. And then the second act for me is perfection. The third act is a hoot, and obviously the final trio is one of the greatest pieces of music ever written. Uh I've seen opera I've seen several times. I saw it, I think for the very first time, it was the Susan Graham, Renee Fleming cast.
Yep.
And then most recently we had the Lisa Davidson,
Samantha Hankey cast.
Romantic Hanky was incredible.
Yeah.
And there's Erin Morley as
It was
well
Anne
in that
Morley. Yeah.
cast. So it was a really solid cast. I mean, for me, that performance, Samantha Hankey stole the show, stole every single scene she was in. She was a standout in that performance. I know a lot of people went to see Lisa Davidson, who was also quite good in her own right, but Samantha Hankey was just such an incredible Octavian. Um, but yeah, it's an opera that I get so much pleasure from going to see repeatedly, and I fall in love with it more and more every single time I see it.
Yeah, it's an interesting opera. I love Strauss. For me, Strauss is a masterful composer, and you know how much I love Electra and Salome and Die Frau Schotten, and those are like my three favorites. And I've seen, the Egyptian Helen, and I've tried to go to see every Strauss opera that they present whenever it's presenting in New York or wherever we are in town. The Rosenkavalier, I have a very love-hate relationship with. Because I agree, the trio is amazing. The last duet is beautiful. The presentation of the rose is
Oh yeah,
absolutely
I mean,
gorgeous music. And then there's a moment in the first act where she's saying goodbye to Octavian, which is just heartbreaking music. And the orchestra and the Marshall's music soaring. It's great. The Italian tenor's aria is also beautiful
oh
as
yes.
well. And there's some comic moments for sure in the third act, but I personally sometimes I think it goes way too long, and sometimes I would like it to be shorter because it is 4 hours. The vault is gorgeous, and I mean there is really beautiful music. So I mean I can't say that I don't like it, but I can also say that it can sometimes for me drag in times, whereas like for example something like Electro or Salome, for me it's just moves, 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 moves. Same with the Die Frau
Well, they're
Schotten.
also shorter operas, and they're
Yeah.
also much more condensed. The action's a lot more streamlined. I do appreciate. I think for me with Rosenkavalier, Strauss finds this really incredible balance between much more chatty
Yeah.
conversational moments, but also the act. Like I said, I think Act Two is brilliant because I do feel that the action is constantly moving forward, and I think Act Three kind of picks that up and runs with it because that whole sequence in the inn, or in the Robert Carson production, it's not very much not an inn, but that whole
No, it's not.
sequence, it is for me, it keeps the action driving forward in anticipation of. I mean, the Robert Carson one, I do love that production. I do think it's excellent. I do think it's questionable that the Marshall shows up at this, like, um
Brothel.
Yeah, this brothel. I don't think she would do that, you know, in a more historically accurate piece. But then again, she shows up in an inn. Would she do that? I don't know. You know, there's questions if we're gonna
Unless
talk
she's
about.
disguised.
Right. Well, but she's not, clearly not, right? There's historical questions that we can ask about what the action of the story. But my point is I do think that the opera, in addition to having so much glorious music throughout, is this interesting balance between, you know, just kind of having much more. I do think there's just an opportunity for characters to grow and to build. I think that Strauss definitely, in his collection of operas, especially his most renowned ones, there are some truly fascinating characters. I do find this opera to be among those that has, you know, characters that I love, that I think when they're performed by masters of their craft, they're elevated further. I do think that the music has moments that are really complex and challenging, but all in all, it is a just a romantic sweep from start to finish, in my view. And
Yeah, yeah,
I
for
hope,
sure. There's definitely that. I mean, I will say one thing. I do think that it also depends on the performers that are there. I mean,
but doesn't anything,
mm,
especially in opera.
sure, yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that the times I've seen it, I remember the first one I saw it was the Otto Schenk production
Mm,
at the Met, and that was with Martina Serafin. And I don't remember the rest
I
of the
saw that one.
cast. We were together, and I think that was not really planned. I think we just went on a whim.
I think Kathleen Kim was one of the singers.
Maybe, yeah, I think so. But I don't. Yeah, I think it was Kathleen Kim, but I don't
I
remember who the
don't.
Octavian was.
Yeah, I don't either. It's not coming to mind right now.
The one that I really do feel like was my first Rosenkavalier, other than the fact, Otto Schenk production, I think it was the Renee Fleming, Elena Garancha, um,
Robert Carson production.
Robert Carson production, and Gunther Grossbach,
Yeah,
who I think for me it was, it was Renee Fleming's leaving that role behind and retiring it and retiring all of her older roles. But I think for me, the standout of those product performances were Gunther Grossbach and Elina Garancha. I think that they really created a dynamic that entertained me, I would say, and I
yeah,
don't want to say only entertained me, but they kept me in the story more so than I would say someone like Renee Fleming did, or we saw Kathleen Kim, but Aaron Marley was is in the recording. Which, not to say that they're not phenomenal interpreters of that opera, but I just think that for me it was the dynamic between Elina Garancha and Gunther Grossbach that really did that for me in that performance.
yeah. No, I understand. Um, you know,
And
I did see the Oto Shank production a few
yeah,
times, and I've seen the Robert Carson a few times. I don't know that I would pick one or the other. I think they're both aesthetically different enough and unique enough. Obviously, obviously the Robert Carson, the stage craft and the stage direction is probably a little bit more specific,
yeah,
and in some ways, that really benefits the final act. Because I
yeah.
do think that the Shank production, two times I saw it, it could drag a bit because I don't think the staging was as strong.
It's gorgeous though. It's absolutely
But
gorgeous.
to my point, the first act is absolutely fabulous
Yeah,
to look at. But I also think that, I mean, I love the touches that Robert Carson gives to the second act of his
yeah,
production, which
for
with the
sure.
cannons and the suggestions of war. So I mean, I don't know. I love that opera. I'm actually, you know, really excited for you to see it in Zurich and tell me what your impressions are of that production.
Yeah.
Um, who's directing that one?
Don't remember right now, but I'll definitely get back to you on that one. What I will say is that Rosenkavalier did give us the opportunity to see Camilla Island at the Met,
Mm, mm,
who
mm.
is one of the greatest Wagnerians. So, and she made her belated debut at the Met, and so we finally got to see this amazing performer. That for me is, I think, the Marshallin that I remember the most, because that woman has such a dynamic force on that stage. And yeah, I'm excited for this one. And like I said before, I think I'm really excited because I finally get to see Diana Damrau again as a performer, someone that I've admired for many years, and in Strauss, which she's been making a lot of strides with throughout the past few years. With Rosenkavalier, and she did Arabella, and she's been like a like more of the doing the lighter Strauss roles. She did Zerbinetta in Ariante of Naxos, and she did Sophie in Rosenkavalier as well. And now as her career she's matured, she's going towards, I guess the more mature characters. So she did Capriccio very famously, and now she's doing Rosenkavalier, and I believe she's doing Arabella as well. So it's nice to see that evolution, and I'm very excited to see what she brings to this character, because I can't imagine I'm very excited to just see her dynamism on the stage.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps it all for today. We are going to be traveling, as we noted. You're going to Zurich, I'm going to New York, then you're going to be in Italy for a couple of operas as well.
Yes.
And then so probably our next episode is going to come around mid-October, and by then, we'll probably recap some of our operatic adventures, catch up on some of the biggest news that's going on, and of course, bring to you guys our opera of the month.
Yes.
But anyways, and obviously update you on what we're going to be covering over the next several months, because we got a pretty busy slate coming up. So thank you so much for joining us. Please, as always, you can subscribe to our channel
Our
on
YouTube
Spotify.
channel, on Spotify, on Apple, on Podbean, and you should follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, on X, on Threads, or on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So thank you very much for being here, and we will see you at the opera.